Installing cam caps. So make sure that all the cam caps are on the correct cylinders, or on the correct valve, I should say. They're all numbered by cylinder. Actually, they're all numbered sequentially 1 through 8, but it's 1 through 4 across the left to right on the exhaust, and 5 through 8 on the intakes, left to right. And that's just critical because the bearing surfaces are already mated, and each cap has to face forward because of the way they've been machined and such. So, and then on the cam change side, if you can see it, there are paint pen marks that were made before I took the cams out. It would probably be easier to hear me if I didn't have Billy Squire roaring in the background, but anyway, those paint pen marks are lined up again exactly with the sprocket and the chain. And then of course down here on the engine, if you can see in there, the timing mark must stay the same. If that ever moved, or if the cam chain ever slipped off the sprocket on the crankshaft, that would not be good. Egg crates are fantastic for holding and sorting parts. All the cam caps sat in here. My 3 out of spec shims, which we have one right here. That's a 13 mil, you know, Japanese valve shim. In fact, my buddy Rob sent me 2 of the 2.25s, which I needed. Scrap cardboard's always handy as well. These are all my valve clearance measurements. If any of these fell out of the spec range over here, let me turn him down a bit here. There. Anything that fell out of spec, then you look at a chart that's in the manual. I had 3 that were out of spec. This is the one that took a while to get the shim. I was able to get these shims right away. So I had 3 valves out of spec. Exhaust on 2, intake on 2, and intake on 4. They weren't hugely out of spec, but I figured once I had her apart, I might as well put new ones in. So the next critical step, once these are all snugged down in the proper order, and essentially what happens here is this is 1, 2, in there is 3, 4, back here is 5, 6, out there is 7, 8, and then it's the same for the intake cam. So I've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'm back over here for 5 and 6. This is a small torque wrench. These are to be torqued to 12 Newton meters, and I've got my wrench set to just a hair over 12. I think it works out to 12.3. So as any torque wrench works, unless it's a bending beam torque wrench, but this is a snap type or whatever. Right about there. There. There we go. So that's the exhaust side all done. Now the intake's next. Now what we do, after I went through the torque figures on the camshaft caps again, just to make sure they were all, I double check them. And then you turn over the engine a little bit each way and make sure there's no binding of the camshafts. So here we go, forward. Alright. As you can see everything turning. Alright. And then we will reverse the wrench and we'll just come back a few degrees the other way. Okay, so I had a bit of a concern there a minute ago, because when I was rotating the crankshaft back again, suddenly I got a bit of a skip and the front camshaft exhaust actually popped off the chain slightly. Now they recommend in the manual that you turn the crankshaft a few degrees forward and backward, but they then say after that to reinstall the tensioner. And I would be more inclined to actually have the tensioner reinstalled before I go cranking the crankshaft forward and backward a bit, for the very reason as to what happened. So everything seems to line up again, the timing mark on the end of the crank and my paint marks. And of course the real critical thing is not so much my paint marks, although that is, but it's that little mark right there. Where is it? Right there on each camshaft sprocket, and the exhaust has one as well in there. When they are both level with the top of the surface or the top plane of the head, and your timing mark is on the end of the crankshaft down here, then all is good. My paint marks are actually just a quick and easy reference for putting the chain back on each sprocket. So if you're doing this, I would probably recommend you put the tensioner back in, which goes down in there between the carburetor intakes, to keep tension on the chain properly when you go rotating back and forth. And the only reason you rotate it back and forth a few degrees is to make sure that there's no binding with the camshafts inside when they're bolted and torqued down in their caps. It is possible to get the camshaft slightly cocked in these and it'll bind. So it's just to make sure they turn freely. Because it's a shim under bucket design, when you put the cams back in, they sit crooked because you got some valves are not being pushed down by the lobe, and you got some that the lobe is actually down, and that causes the camshaft to sit up. So you got to go very gently, easily torquing these caps down to start with in a pattern to get everything to seat down properly. The book calls for 12 Newton meters, the same as the cam cap bolts for the cam chain tensioner. That's the intact one. I now have one sitting in there, broken off with about 1/4 inch of threads protruding. Not fun. So I'm going to have to pull my carb intakes off to get room, and hopefully I can get a stud extractor on there and turn that out. But why the wrench wasn't clicking, I should have known better, because I could feel turning and turning and turning forever, very gently. And the wrench, I even backed the wrench down to 9 Newton meters instead of 12. It gave me a click at 9, so I bumped it up to 11, and the top one gave and broke. And you can't see it, but you can see right about where my thumb is that bolt has necked down just slightly. So I'm going to have to get 2 probably better bolts. It's going to take some work to get the proper tools in there to extract that remainder of that bolt if I can't get it with a stud puller. So long story short, just to finish the video off, as you can see, the bolt did get removed, and I got 2 new ones, albeit I have to travel a ways to get them, and hopefully I can get it back together tomorrow.